Happening now, the White House Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and President Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner are in Moscow right now. They're planning to meet shortly with the Russian President Vladimir Putin to get over some major hurdles that remain on the peace proposal to try to end the war in Ukraine. Moscow is standing firmly that its core requirements must be met before it signs on. Joining us now, CNN senior military analyst, retired U.S. Navy Admiral James Stavridis. He's a former NATO Supreme Allied Commander and a partner of the Carlyle Group here in Washington. Admiral, thanks so much for joining us. What do you think Putin's strategy is here? Is he going to stand his ground on these key issues from his perspective, but also make some overtures to Trump and the U.S. that he wants to repair their relationship?
I think that's a good summary. We heard that from Jill Doherty, our mutual friend, who is an exceptional observer of all this. I think that's a good, quick analysis, meaning Putin's maximalist demands are another chunk of territory in Donbass so he can consolidate control of that region, and no security guarantees that are really meaningful for our Ukrainian friends. That's what he wants. But off to the side, what he's dangling out there, working through this fellow Dmitriev, who's the head of their sovereign investment fund, Dmitriev. And so he'll dangle this idea of mutual trade, and he's put up a video of a train that runs under the water between Alaska and Russia. I don't see that working, so I am absolutely for what Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner are doing. I think they're doing everything they can to try and close the distance between now the U.S.-Ukrainian side of this and the Russian side. Final thought, Wolf. We talk constantly, we should, about Ukraine-Russia positions. How's the U.S. influencing? There's a fourth big actor here, and that would be the European Union, who ultimately is going to foot the majority of this bill for Ukraine. So I'm listening closely to what the Europeans are saying.
And the Europeans are directly involved, as we all know as well. What may be the biggest hurdle right now, Admiral? In my opinion, it's that Russia still wants Ukrainian territory it claims, but doesn't even militarily control right now. How do you resolve that issue?
I don't think there's a quick resolution to it. You could do some creative things as were done in Korea at the end of the Korean War, creating, if you will, a demilitarized zone where neither side is allowed to have significant military force, perhaps patrolled by a neutral third-party country. You can think of some creative solutions like that. But I think you're right, Wolf. The major sticking point is the demand by Putin that he simply be handed another tranche of territory. I don't see the Ukrainians going along with that.
And I'm going to ask you this question. You're the former NATO Supreme Allied Commander. Is future NATO membership something that Ukraine can give up as its main concession to Russia right now? The Russians don't want Ukraine to be a member of NATO. If they have good enough international security guarantees, not just from the U.S., but from the Europeans as well, does that offset the security, potential security offered by NATO membership?
I think it does. And it's all about time and distance. And if you think back to Finland in 1939, they gave up a chunk of territory. They swore they would remain neutral forever. Well, last time I looked, Finland is now a member of NATO. So my advice to the Ukrainians is grab a security guarantee. Don't obsess about NATO membership this minute. We can get back to that. And final thought, Wolf, people ask me a lot, gee, does NATO really want Ukraine as a member? I would argue eventually we do. Breadbasket of Europe, huge country, 40 million population. And they'll come out of this war with the most highly blooded and innovated land forces in Europe. Yeah, we want them in the alliance eventually.
Eventually, key word. The Ukrainian president of Zelensky said today, in fact, that the document they worked on in Geneva has been refined further following the weekend talks down in Florida. What do you think?
I think it's down to exactly what you and I have been talking about, the territorial giveaway that really sticks in the craw of the Ukrainians. I think everything else has probably been worked over to include the level of security guarantees. So what I think Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner are going to do are go into Putin and say, look, we've got a very close to a final agreement here. What can you give that would get us over the top? I think, unfortunately, what we're going to discover is that Putin is no friend to the United States, no friend to the Ukrainians, certainly no friend to Europe. I think he will, where we started this conversation, look for economic concessions to go alongside the military ones he's demanding.
Admiral James Stavridis, the former NATO Supreme Allied Commander, thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks, Wolf.